Entertainer. In this video, we're going to talk about how to build the Kinetic Entertainer Coaster kit that you purchased. You can see that you're going to build a really fun planetary gear coaster that will spin and give you hours of entertainment. Let's take a quick look at the contents, and then we'll look at them in more detail in a moment. So I'm just going to slide this sleeve off of it ever so carefully and use my scissors to open the seal. And once I've done that, we can take a peek inside. I'm assuming you've already done this step and got to the link for the videos that are on this card. This card will also tell you the contents of the box, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And now I'm going to pause. We're going to restart the video in 1 second with it aimed down looking at the table so I can show you the details of the pieces in your box. We'll get started by opening our box and looking at the pieces and parts inside it. So I'm going to start with this big stack here. Take the full stack out, and then I'm going to flip it over, and we'll start looking at these pieces from the bottom and talk about the different things you'll need to prepare as you build your coaster. This first piece on the bottom is actually a piece of scrap wood. It may have gear teeth around it, or it may be a circle, but it's just going to be an extra piece you can use to test your decorating. And then we're going to end up with a thin ring here on the bottom. I'll need that in 1 second. And a piece of acrylic. So this is paper covering a piece of plastic, and we don't need it until the very end. And now we can start to look at the pieces that make up your coaster. The bottom of your coaster will be this. It's got a big hole in the middle. That way we can inset our nut and protect your table. And it's going to go on the bottom like so. You may want to decorate the bottom. Everybody I know has to pick up the bottom of these and see how they look. And then we're going to put this piece, and we're going to glue those two pieces together. Once we've got that in place, then we're going to take this. This will actually glue to the top of the base once we've assembled it. And now we're ready to look at how to build the actual geared part of your coaster. So I'm going to grab the bag of gears from my box, and I'm going to cut it open. And you should find 4 gears in the bag. 1 will be big and 3 will be small. So I'm going to put my big gear here in the middle. These 3 other gears are going to go around the outside. We call that inner gear the sun gear. And these gears that rotate around it, the planet gears. Make sure when you're building your project that you've sanded the base and both the bottom and top of all of these gears, and then you can decorate like described in the techniques video, but make sure you get the top of the analyst, the top and bottom of the gears, and the top of the base at the very least sanded, along with the bottom of this piece, which is going to get fastened to the top like so. So your gears will appear through as you spin your coaster. And then when we're close to done, we're going to add our coaster pieces. This is a spacer for some screw heads. We're going to put this ring on, which will hold the piece of acrylic. And then we're going to glue that on top. By the way, those notes really are the notes to the riff in the Entertainer, so you can think about them in your head while you go as well. And you'll have all kinds of opportunity while you're thinking about decorating those to think about what you want to do. Whether you're using plain wood stain or Sharpies, there are lots and lots of choices to be had while assembling your coaster. So first, stop the video here and go away, and you'll want to get all of your wood prepared, sanded, stained, painted, decorated, whatever you want to do, and then come back and you can watch the rest of the remainder of the video while we walk through assembling your coaster together. now that you've prepared the pieces, let's actually walk through assembly of the coaster together. I'm going to move the bottom range out of the way, and we're going to start with just the bottom layer and our analyst. This is the layer that goes around and around and the gears spin on, and we're going to glue these two together. So this is your first chance to practice making sure things are lined up perfectly. I'm just going to put a layer of glue around the outside. Be a little careful here. You don't want to get glue in your gear teeth. If you're using wood glue, you can use it as well. Make sure you stop between each step and clamp and let the glue dry well. And this is the bottom pieces of our coaster, all nice and glued together and ready to go. And now we're going to move on to our gears themselves, and we have to prepare this layer before we can actually put this layer into our coaster. So I'm going to get my screw kit. It should have 3 small 1/4-inch screws and 1 1/2-inch screw, 1 nut, and a set of feet in it. And I'll pull those out. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these 1/4-inch screws and we're going to glue them into the 3 outside holes. So I'm just going to put a dot of glue in each of those holes. And you can do this one at a time. And we want to make sure those screws get glued into the holes well and nice and dry. That's what's going to provide our pivot points for the gears. So we definitely need to make sure those are there and not falling out. Since I'm worried I've got a little bit of excess on them, I've wiped the outside here. You might also have had excess glue that you wanted to wipe the outside of when you put those 2 layers together. And now we're ready to put our 2 layers of our coaster together. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put one of my small gears face down on each of these 3 screws that are coming out. And I'm going to take my big gear and I'm going to put it face down right in the middle of them. And then I'm going to take my coaster top and I'm going to set it on top and wiggle it a little bit and make sure this will spin nicely together. And that's the first step. And you now actually have your spinning piece, but we want to put this together so it doesn't come apart. And I'm going to do that by putting a screw down through the middle, like so. Sometimes you'll have to screw some of these in, depending on how tight the holes got when we cut them. And I'm going to use super glue on this screw. You can also use thread locker on it. And I want to make sure this is nice and loose. So I'm going to put a dot of super glue there. I'm going to put my nut on, and I'm going to make sure I have a little bit of air gap between the bottom of the wood and the bottom of the nut there so that things spin nicely. And then you need to give that a minute to dry to make sure it doesn't tighten up on you. The worst thing is those silly screws tightening up, because if you're playing with it, you may manage to get it tighter. Once that's dry, now we're ready to glue our base on. So I'm going to put a line of glue out here. I'm going to take my base and glue it to the coaster like that. And again, push down, make sure it's nice and seated, and it's not. Occasionally, super glue likes to slide around a little bit. And this one wants to slide around a lot. Maybe it needs a little more glue. Usually with super glue, less is more. But every so often, you'll run into 2 pieces of wood that are stubborn. Give them 10 or 15 seconds of pressure, and that's usually enough to get it all to seat. Much better. And now, while I'm looking at the bottom, I'm ready to put my feet on. We did give you sticky feet in this case. But what we have discovered over making many coasters is that they don't stick as well as we'd want them to. So I'm actually going to put a little dot of super glue on each of those as well. And I am going to glue my 4 feet down to make sure we keep our tables nice and pretty, and the coaster from having any ability to screw up the table. Now at this point your coaster is really built except for the top. Won't work very well as a coaster right now, but it is a nice toy. And if all you really want is the toy, you can choose to stop here. But it was designed to have a couple more layers on it, so let's add those additional layers to it as we go. The first of those layers is going to be one of these thick rings. So I'm going to take the thick ring in my hand, and I'm going to put a line of glue around it. You can also do it on the coaster itself, but I always feel safer doing it on the piece that's in my hand, away from all my prettiness. And I'm going to take that and set it on here like so. And glue that down. Just like that. And now I'm going to put this thin ring on. The thing to be careful of with the thin ring is that you want to make sure when you set it down and glue it down, you don't break it. So you have to be a little delicate with it. And again, I'm going to put the glue on it rather than on the coaster part, so I don't get this glue here, there, and everywhere, other than on my fingers. So I've got a nice even round of glue on it. If you get too much on it, you can always wipe some of it off. And I'm going to set this on top, make sure I don't squeeze it at all. And make sure that lines up nicely with the layer beneath it. And then I'm going to give this a little chance to dry. Now, the one thing to be aware of when you're building a coaster like this is that acrylic and super glue don't mix. So if you are using super glue, then you want to make sure that coaster is nice and dry before you work on the next layer. And you want to make sure you don't have wet super glue on your fingers, because if you accidentally touch the acrylic with the wet super glue on your fingers, you will damage the acrylic. So at this point, I'm just going to peel this paper off. You can start it with a screwdriver or something else if it's being annoying. And I'm going to take it completely off this side. Like so. I'm going to flip it over and start it on the other side. And again, I just took my finger and started a little corner there. You've got 1/8 of an inch or so that can't possibly be seen. And this time, rather than peeling it all the way off, I'm going to build a little bundle with it to give myself a little handle on it. And then I'm going to carefully set it over here on my box to keep it out of the way while I do the next step. And the next step is going to be putting glue all around this ring on the coaster very carefully, so I don't get it on the inside or any place else I don't want to, depending on how skilled you are. If you are a little one, you might want a parental unit to help you. If you are an uncoordinated one like me, you might want somebody to help you just ever so carefully. Run this layer of glue around the outside like so. And then you can use your little handle on your acrylic and you can set it in. If you trust yourself implicitly, you can set the acrylic in first and then put the glue around, but I always mess it up when I do that. And then I'm going to take my top ring and I'm going to set my top ring on top, again making sure everything is lined up perfectly. Now at this point, if you're not lined up perfectly, you can use a dark Sharpie or dark wood stain to get rid of some of those overlapping pieces. And there you have it, your very own entertainer coaster that you've made all by yourself. Thank you.